Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jeremy Kowalski, and I'm a PhD candidate in the Geography Department here at York University, and it is my privilege to serve as the moderator for this event. As a point of departure, I would like to welcome everyone here to the opening plenary of the Arab Revolution's Crisis, Resistance, and Prospects Conference. This is certainly going to be an exciting event, which I am confident will not only prove to be an enlightening experience, but will illuminate various dimensions of the historical transformation currently underway in both the Middle East and North Africa that remain heretofore absent from and/or situated on the margins of dominant formal, practical, and popular commentary and analysis. I would now like to take the opportunity to introduce our guest speakers for this plenary session. Our first speaker, Dr. Radhika Desai, if you could please identify yourself, is a professor in the Political Studies Department at the University of Manitoba. Her work has found expression in the form of numerous books and academic journal articles. In fact, her most recent book, Geopolitical Economy After U.S. Hegemony, Globalization, Empire, has recently been released in actually this month. Her research interests include, but are not limited to, South Asian politics, cultural economics, and the history of economic thought. Our second speaker, Mr. Ali Mustafa, is an independent journalist based here in Toronto. He is a writer and media activist who specializes in Middle Eastern politics, where he has just spent the last year covering the events in Egypt and Israel and Palestine. He is currently the co-editor of Upping the Anti-Journal and has written many articles documenting the revolution in Egypt, including A Tribute to Tahrir Square, This is What Democracy Looks Like, and The Egyptian Revolution Continues, an interview with Hassam El-Hamaloui. His writing can be found at FromBeyondTheMargins.blogspot.com. Our third speaker, Dr. Eric Davis, is a professor of political science at Rutgers University and past director of the University Center for Middle Eastern Studies. His research has included the study of the relationship between state power and historical memory in modern Iraq, the political economy of Egyptian industrialization, the ideology and social basis of religious radical movements in Egypt and Israel, and the impact of oil wealth on the state and culture in Arab oil-producing countries. Dr. Davis's work has found expression in the form of, again, numerous books and academic journal articles, including Memories of State, Politics and Collective Identity in Iraq, Statecraft in the Middle East, Oil, Historical Memory and Popular Culture, and Taking Democracy Seriously in Iraq. Dr. Davis was also a member of an 8-nation study entitled Democracy and Development in the Arab World, which is conducted under the auspices of the World Bank and the American University in Beirut, which has recently been published in both Arabic and English. And our fourth speaker, who is currently en route from the airport, Dr. Kevin Anderson, is a professor of sociology, political science, and feminist studies at the University of California at Santa Barbara. His work has found expression in the form of numerous books and academic journal articles, including Marx at the Margins, on nationalism, ethnicity, and non-Western societies, and Foucault and the Iranian Revolution, Gender, and the Seductions of Islamism. His research interests include, but are not limited to, social and political theory, especially Marx, Hegel, Marxist humanism, the Frankfurt School, Foucault, and the Orientalism debate. So please join me in welcoming our guests to this event. However, before we proceed to our plenary discussion, I would like to outline the format for this session. Each speaker will have approximately 25 minutes to present. After our first two speakers, we will take a 10 to 15-minute break to stretch, visit the restroom, and/or inhale some fresh air. Following the break, our last two guests will present in succession. At the conclusion of the formal remarks by all of our guests, there will be a question and answer period. We ask that for those of you that would like to ask a question, to please approach one of the microphones which will be in the aisles to address the panel. When addressing the panel, please indicate to whom your question is directed and limit your remarks to a single question. Out of courtesy for other people who would like to ask a question, we respectfully request that you ask a question without taking license to editorialize or sermonize the subject. Of course, we expect that any person wishing to ask a question will do so in a tone and tenor that reflects the best traditions of academic decorum. Following the question and answer period, we'll collectively be given the opportunity to enjoy a short musical performance given by a local band of musicians, Kusha Nakai and Ibrahim Renems. I would like to now ask the sponsoring academic of this conference, Dr. Sab El-Nasri of the Political Science Department at York University, to come forward to offer his introductory remarks for both the conference and this plenary session.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. Good afternoon. I'm extremely pleased and delighted, especially when we harvest the fruit of almost 1 year-long work, and when it comes to such a wonderful end, and I hope not the very end, because we'll have Saturday and Sunday too. I'm extremely pleased to have such remarkable scholars and activists as keynote speakers. I was thinking about my own introductory remark. I thought maybe to focus on one essential thing about what's going on in the Middle East and beyond the Middle East, because this conference is not only about the Middle East, but also beyond. Struggles taking place in Europe, North America, South America, Asia, Africa, and so on. So one might argue we are witnessing for the first time in history a real international of people cross-referencing to each other in their own struggle, which is something marvelous we didn't witness probably for centuries. So my speech will be organized around this term struggle, because the struggle of people, not only in the Middle East in general, is the material out of which we tailor our knowledge and finding, academic as well as political. But the findings and knowledge are neither a mere reflection of this reality nor a simple description, as if human reality is nothing other than an expressive totality, as Louis Althusser used to put it. Insofar as our knowledge and finding represent an intervention in the contested situation, they not only contribute to our understanding of it, but represent an orientation for action when the involved actors deem them relevant to their own struggle. Having said that, analysis are no substitute for real struggle. To date, the development of real democratic alternative has been suppressed by the permanent and multiple form of intervention of imperialist power and a dominant Islamic political form. When we look at Tunisia, Egypt, Iraq, and so on. With the Arab revolutions, both the still existing conservative regimes and as well as their conservative opponents, both under massive global and national political pressure, will find themselves in an increasing crisis of legitimacy, and thus will be compelled to reconsider the political strategies and calculation of power they have pursued thus far. They can't but follow a new liberal course of development under the compulsions of the emerging geopolitical transformations, which will contribute to the further intensification of this struggle, simply because you can't solve the crisis with the same means that caused the crisis in the first place. Kind of vicious circle, which is good for the social struggle. So the ideological construct of what I have termed long ago Islamic democracy is presented as the recognition of cultural particularities. However, it's not the structural limit of liberal democracy that is being conveyed by this, i.e., its non-universalization, but conversely, its claim to a normative universalities on a global scale. This is consistent from the point of view of the political and economic classes in the metropolis, but also from the view of the strategists and the IMF and World Bank, because the top-down decreting of a neoliberal structuring in the 80s and 90s did not lead, as claimed, to more affluence and debt reduction, but conversely to more poverty, over-independence, and repression. Neoliberalism thus must be politically and culturally interiorized. In this sense, Islamic democracies mean more effective political control and cultural disciplining as part of a new phase of a neoliberal restructuring. Thus, the missionaries of the old Roman Catholic missionarism, which represented the cultural justification for the wars or clash of civilization, then less cynical, the war of conquest and colonialization, the medieval crusades and the reconquistas are being virtually superseded, in Hegelian terms, aufgehoben, but in a neoliberal sense. Yet, the contradictory development, indeed, the intensification of the political and social struggle in the Arab and other Middle Eastern societies could mark a transition to a post-authoritarian phase, which for the first time indicates, opens possibilities for other political approaches that can be articulated by popular forces positioned politically to the left of the political spectrum. This opening of the political space enables other actors to popularize political forms which admittedly are neither arbitrarily constructible nor happen in a form determined without alternative, but instead implies protracted hegemonic political contestations and conflicts. Since the direction of the political development in this region depends on the outcome of these struggles and their condensation, institutionalization, it's more certainly worthwhile to further pursue the problematic and to investigate empirically, critically, concretely the detailed project related to each particular social formation. The tendencies outlined here can finally be sharpened into a hypothesis whose rationality can only be inferred by future political praxis itself and not a priori. Thus, one should not close the horizon of the possibilities of the present situation by an objectivistic or culturalist analysis, but try to determine the conditioning for it from a critical perspective of power relation. A peaceful and a just solution is possible even if arriving at it will be anything but free of conflicts. In face of the violent and destructive character of the current situation, the increasing number of civilian victims, and the depressing news the media brings daily, this appears no doubt to be naive. However, the appearance of naivety is contingent upon the time horizon that inform our interpretations, the social forces with which one associates, and the form one brings him or herself in, which co-decide about the historical course of the events. Our analysis must place the ongoing struggle at its center. How the contradictions, however, concretely develop or get critical, and how the oppressed act, how they make the best out of the situation for further development, determine the course of the conflict and the forms of political change. The global strategic question is whether or how it is possible that in the present crisis, the forces of the transition for a situation which could come to a radical break with the current status quo could be strengthened. One way of doing this is to engage critically and self-critically with this struggle and draw lessons learned for further struggles. To try to determine against the hegemonial shutdown of the still subordinate, already subversive, tendentious articulation of spirit of splitting Gramsci forces of an alternative historical bloc, organizing themselves autonomously to speak in this sense of a post-situation's mean to establish the concrete possibilities of change of the relation of forces and their constellation in which several political projects could coexist, placing the struggles themselves in the foreground of the necessary, always biased analysis, though a lot of academics would argue the other one, or necessary always biased analysis. This optimistic scenario, in this respect, is part of these struggles. I will end with one of my favorite quotes of a certain Karl Marx, with a minor modification to the English translation for Menschen in Germans mean people, not men. So people, quote, make their own history, but they don't make it just as they please. They don't make it under circumstances chosen by themselves, but under circumstances directly encountered, given, and transmitted from the past. The tradition of all the dead generations wakes like a nightmare on the brain of the living. Karl Marx, the 18th Premier of Louis Bonaparte. Thank you.